message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Oh shit! Look at me. I'm actually starting this thing. Whoa. Well, hey guys, welcome to the Evolution Now. I am your host, Jordan, and I'm your main host today. That's freaking bizarre. But anyway, I'm joined here with my beautiful co-host, Michael. How you doing, Michael?
Pretty good. I am the great, beautiful co-host.
You are.
I think I get the lion's share of the beauty, though. I'm just saying.
I'm not even going to argue. We are also joined with, I would say, the equally as beautiful Christopher. How you doing, Chris?
Fuck you guys from last time.
Whoa!
But, hey, I mean, I tried to start the show last time with friendship, and I was met with total, apprehension, and it hurt my feelings. You know, guys, it hurt my feelings.
I'm sorry. I'm in a place
hurt.
where I'm not entirely sure if you're actually joking anymore.
I'm so hurt right now. You don't even know.
I'm okay.
But how's it going, guys? I've had a interesting week, with all the amazing news coming out of, I guess, Washington and everything. Ugh.
Yeah,
there's always news coming out of Washington. There is so much news coming out of Washington. I don't know how news programs keep up with it all.
Yeah,
everything it does is news.
Yeah. Oh my god.
It's awful. Also, the local news station has had basically 24/7 coverage all week long because the damn Eagles are going to the Super Bowl on the Eagles. It's like we have a television network, NBC 10 here, and our where me and Jordan work, they have it on all day long. And anytime I go into the break room when it's on the news, it's always about the Eagles. Always. It's so
oh god,
it's so annoying.
Well, over here, we've had a bit of a place swap really, because Corbyn came out recently and said we can't stop Brexit. It's no point trying. We should just accept it. And everyone on the left was like, "What the fuck, dude?"
I mean, it is true. I mean, no, I don't think
stupid. We can still stop it if we just decide to.
I'm not sure that Europe would want that, though, is the problem. Like, with this whole Brexit thing, their whole thing is, we want it to hurt as hard or as much as possible.
People to leave the future.
Yeah.
But economically, as the EU loses out as well, it's not as significant as the UK, but the EU does lose out. The best thing for all sides is that we just cancel. We can end Article 50 anytime until 2019. So just do that.
If I remember correctly, too, your boy Corbyn has actually somewhat been in favor of leaving the EU anyway, right?
He's always been a bit Eurosceptic, but up till now, he's been on the fence. And I figured that maybe he didn't like Europe, but realizes that leaving now isn't the right time, or maybe he's doing the calculus. No, he doesn't want to lose. If Labour has like 10% or so Brexit, then he doesn't want to lose those people by coming out for Remain. But at the same time, he doesn't want to come out for Leave. But no, he just came out for Leave, and so fuck him. It's big enough that I would consider. You just said fuck you
to Jeremy Corbyn?
It's big enough that I'd consider moving to Liberal Democrats. I can't believe how stupid that is.
Wow. Well, that's actually like a title shift for you. That's
big.
Brexit's a huge issue, and it's going to shape the future of UK politics for decades. And I happen to be in my 20s. I'm going to be affected by this for, possibly the rest of my life.
Right.
And coming out for Leave like that is basically like all the politics for the rest of my life could be screwed if he doesn't oppose Brexit.
True. I mean, to be fair, it would be epically controversial if he did decide to turn the tide on a referendum, right? Like, wouldn't that just even, despite how controversial or how egregious the what the referendum was about, like that would be a questionable act in the name of or against democracy, wouldn't it? Like if he just decided to be like, we're going to scrap this thing that you guys voted for.
No, the idea at the moment is to have a second referendum. So we'd have a referendum before the vote. Now, then after we've got the deal sorted, we've got the best deal we can, then we'd have another referendum on that deal. And if we don't get it, we cancel. And if we do get it, then we leave.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, no.
I guess yeah, that's interesting though. Like you've been a hardcore Corbyn fan for a while. It feels like to me at least. But yeah, that's really interesting that you are able to just be like, yeah, no.
It'd be like if Bernie said now, what's the big issue in America? Let's say Bernie said,
we're going to build the wall.
Yeah. Bernie said, right, now we should build the wall. We should fund the wall and build it. And you were like, what the fuck, Bernie? What the fuck are you talking about? This is idiotic.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. That would be pretty bad.
Yeah.
And in other news here in America land, Donald Trump had his first, what is it called? The State of the Union address? Mm-hmm. From what I heard, it was, I think, either the longest in history or close to it. And I would say probably 90% of that was like the applause lines that the Republicans were giving him every like 5 minutes, not even. Like, actually more like every 30 seconds there was applause lines. And it was ridiculous. And I really wish we could just like play Bernie Sanders' entire like 30-minute long response to it, but we just can't do that. Honestly, it's not our content. We can't. I would totally do it though, because his response to the entire thing was spot on everywhere that I heard on it. Like I listened to the entire thing through and through.
It's worth mentioning. There was some pretty sickening stuff in the State of the Union as well.
Yeah.
A few people seem to have picked up on it, but there was one line in particular which got me. Is when he said, he was talking about immigration, and he said, Americans are dreamers too. And bear in mind, at the moment, he's holding the actual dreamers to ransom. Unless he gets his wall.
You know what? And
so saying Americans are dreamers too is just dismissing thousands of people who are currently in the lurch, who don't really know what's going to happen in their future. Yeah. It's just a dick move.
You know what that also reminds me of, not to cut you off, Jordan, but the all lives matter thing. You know, like it sounds so reminiscent of that when he's trying to say that, well, Americans are dreamers too. You know, that's the exact reason why all lives matter was like a like nails on a chalkboard to people that were fighting for Black Lives Matter. You know,
right.
It's the same concept. I'm sorry, Jordan. What were you saying?
No, it's cool. I mean, also, essentially what he's doing is pitting pitting American, or, you know, I guess, pitting Americans against dreamers, essentially. Like, he's essentially saying, like, well, you know, you guys, we should be more concerned about, you know, what Americans are dealing with, and not what, you know, what these dreamers have to have. What the fuck am I saying?
This is sad because you're not even the one that's drunk right now.
I know, right?
I'm
think I'm just kind of, I'm like slightly nervy over the fact that I'm hosting tonight.
It's all right, man. The nerves come with it a little bit, you know. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm sort of like a expert at this now. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe not that much, but
did anyone else notice? I've not seen anyone else comment on this, but the Democratic response, and he's going, everyone, today we have to come together as a nation. Klingons off the starboard bow. What are we going to do? And it's a brilliant William Shatner impression. The guy who did the Skip Crest, watch it, and bear in mind that he's doing a Shatner impression. It makes perfect sense.
It was a Kennedy. I know that. Was it like Joe Kennedy or something?
Some Kennedy
I forget
kid.
his first name. But yeah, he was a Kennedy.
A congressman who's funded by Big Pharma. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, pretty much.
Kennedy, yeah.
Yeah. Those are the names.
It's interesting. Yeah, his speech was not great. Like, it was basically like what a lot of people like to term as like boilerplate, like rhetoric bullshit, where it's just like, you know, there's no substance to it. It's just sort of like very like generalized and like, yeah,
we need to come together as a nation and reject this racist rhetoric from the other side who are doing all this stuff, and then we should unity and America.
Exactly.
And then, no, I need something concrete here. With Trump mentioning that America the dreamers too. Okay, are you? What I need to know now is, are you going to fight for these dreamers or not? Because it's important. If he's that implies to me he wants to just get rid of them all.
Yeah.
And I need something of substance from you.
Yeah. Right after
Bernie
Kennedy's speech, or his response was Bernie's, though. And it was perfect. Like, this guy, like, Bernie Sanders really is in tune with I think, a lot of what people care about in the world right now. He seems to be the one voice of reason in all of this mess right now. Republican and Democrat, no matter what side you're on, he is the only one that seems to be talking like real like truth and actual factual numbers and everything on these things, because he was not slouching on that regard. He had tons of numbers, tons of actual evidence to back up his claims on everything he talked about in it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we probably should move on to our topic this week at some point. But
yeah. But let's but actually before we do that, you know, in light of Black History Month, we have a each podcast in the month of February, we're going to highlight an African American figure that made like tremendous contribution to society. So with that, tonight we actually have Chris. Chris, you have someone for us tonight, don't you?
No, I don't have anyone.
Oh, damn it. Okay.
All right. No, okay. I guess I have this one in front of me here, but
oh, great.
I forgot about it completely.
I wish I had a video just so I could see my eyes rolling.
We practiced that.
Yeah. Big league eye rolling, even though this is a audio podcast. But I have this piece here from the website is ema-eda.com. I don't know much about this website. I just found them today. So I don't know what their political leanings are, if they have any or anything like that. But they had a pretty decent piece here for African American, or Black History Month, really. The topic is 3 influential African American engineers, and I wanted to talk about the first one here. And, her name is Katherine Johnson. There was actually a movie not too long ago that was made about this woman's life, or her career at least, with NASA. She is a African-American woman, who is one of the major players in a lot of what we've seen in the early stages of NASA. So I want to read this full piece here from her. It's not too long. It's about like a paragraph or two long, really. Like, it's not too crazy. So here it starts out. At the age of 15, Katherine graduated from high school and began attending West Virginia State College. During her time there, the renowned professor William W. Schieffelin Claytor had a special class created just for Johnson in analytic geometry of space, eventually helping her future career at NASA. In 1937, Katherine graduated summa cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and French. However, After graduation, she ended up teaching due to the limited options for employment within her community. In 1953, Katherine applied and accepted a position to be a computer for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. This is the predecessor to NASA. They were looking for females to help compute large mathematical equations and analysis for the team in their guidance and navigation department. Johnson worked there from 1958 to 1986 as an aerospace technologist. She worked on calculating the trajectory for the first trip to the moon with Alan Shepard in 1959. The launch window for his 1961 Mercury mission plotted backup. Oh, this is another one. I'm sorry. I messed it up. It sounded like okay. She worked on calculating the trajectory for the first trip to the moon with Alan Shepard in 1959. The launch window for his 1961 Mercury mission plotted backup navigational charts for astronauts in case of electronic failures, and calculated the trajectory for the 1969 Apollo 11 flight to the moon. After the Apollo 13 mission was aborted, the crew wouldn't have returned home safely without Johnson's work on backup procedures and charting. Johnson was presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom Award from President Barack Obama on November 24th, 2015, as a pioneer example of African American women in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Recently, a movie called Hidden Figures was released, which is a movie about Johnson and her African American colleagues at NASA. And I highly recommend that movie. I loved the movie. It was really amazing, and I cannot recommend it enough. It was a great movie, and I can't praise it enough.
Yeah, it was aces.
So
sweet.
So that's Katherine Johnson. We owe her such a massive debt of gratitude for the amazing work she did for the fledgling NASA and even our flights to the moon.
Yeah, from the look of it, just to translate a little bit, in space, obviously things are moving around, and it takes, to get to the moon might take a month, say. I don't know exactly how long. But of course, in a month, the moon isn't going to be where it is now, so you can't just point a rocket at the moon and go there. You have to figure out where the moon's going to be when you get there, and then point there.
Yeah.
And so you have to, and obviously the moon's also moving, so if you just turn up at it and it moves into you, it's moving a few thousand miles an hour, you can't just do that, so you need to catch up to it and stuff. She's one of the people who figured out how to actually get there at a speed where you can land on the thing. Yeah. And then be able to get back. Again, at a speed where you can land on the Earth, because the Earth's obviously also moving. Yeah. And from the look of this, what she also did is she figured that, well, if all the electronics and the rocket fail, the astronauts need to know how to get back, which way to go. So she worked out, probably on paper, and navigational charts like they use on ships, but for astronauts, so they can navigate and get back, which is apparently how they got back from the Apollo 13 mission. Yeah. Coming up with these backup positions. Okay, if the electronics fail, look for these stars, and then you can navigate by them.
Yeah, she was absolutely brilliant. Like it even said there in that paragraph, they created a class specially for her because she was so intelligent. That analytic geometry of space class was specifically created for her. She was just brilliant. And yeah. And she, at the time that it was happening, if you watch the movie, it goes into this, she was definitely looked down upon in the movie because she was black for a very long period of time, even though she was working closely with a lot of white counterparts with the job she had. And it's amazing what this woman was able to achieve with all of that against her. Like, most people, if they were, treated the way that she was treated, probably wouldn't have been able to deal with that career for very long at all. But she stuck in and kept fighting for, she kept doing the math, even though there were racist whites there that were basically doing everything in their power to make life a living hell for her. Like, in the movie, it goes into, at first, she was the very first black person in the office that she worked in, or the room that she worked in, and so she took coffee from the coffee pot there, not thinking anything of it. Next day, she came to work. It was they labeled it whites only, and that kind of like horrible treatment is just mind-boggling. It's so disturbing what some people could do to someone, and not only that. She had to actually run halfway across the entire campus of this military base, I'm guessing, where this NASA organization was at that time. She had to run halfway across the campus of this place just to go to the bathroom, because there was only one colored women's bathroom in the entire place, and it was not in the building that she was working in. And so just think about that when you look at these African Americans that achieved so much, even with all of the odds stacked against them.
Right. I mean, she was viewed as being inherently inferior, not only because she was African American, but she was also a woman. So that's like,
that's
in society's eyes, it's a double. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So yeah, what an amazing figure, and I'm really glad you decided to, highlight her achievements.
Yeah, she's absolutely amazing, and we all owe her great debts of gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and from there we will begin our headlining production. So of course tonight we'll be talking about an automation. And what it means, in every area of freaking existence, So yeah. Should I get into it? Are you guys ready?
No.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Go for it, man.
Let's not do it then. Let's not do it. All right. So let's just So. All right, I've written a couple things down. Let's start this off. So, automation. So, automation, it refers to a network of machines designed to perform tasks that were once operated by humans. Now, automation has superseded human ability in some respects even. And a bevy of scientific minds is speculating that automation will swallow the job market within a couple of decades, forcing all of humanity to adapt to an economy that may no longer need us. Yeah. So
interesting.
Bleak. Yeah, future is bleak.
It is worrying.
And
it could be.
Possibly. Right.
I think we're going to get onto that later, but yeah, it could be. There's going to be some hard troubles ahead.
Definitely. Yeah, we're gonna dabble into all the figures and such. But before we do that, I would like to go over a very brief history on automation. And so the first utterances of the word automation came from Ford Motor Company engineering manager D.S. Harder. Automation evolved out of mechanization, which refers to the replacement of human and animal power with mechanical powers such as water wheels, automobiles, even a pulley. Humankind has strived for centuries to invent easier ways to perform physically strenuous tasks. Some of these inventions include the hammer, anvil, and cutting tools, which we can thank our primitive ancestors for. But all that simply aids humans in performing certain tasks. The obvious next step for us was to design tools which completely eliminated human involvement. The Chinese created something called a trip hammer, powered by flowing water and water wheels. The mechanical clock, powered by weights, of course, was developed in Europe around 1335. However, there was only one machine that thrusted humanity into the industrial age or revolution, and that would be the steam engine, which, funny enough, the mechanics which produce electricity today, whether it be coal or nuclear, are powered by steam engines. Since the Industrial Revolution, though, which reared its head starting around 1750, increases in automated machinery reached its apex with the development of computer technology, which is where we are right now. The Industrial Revolution was all about utilizing different forms of energy to increase production, and it's keeping its promise of doing so. So
yeah.
Something.
That is an interesting fact, though, that you went on and sort of like passed off there, though. Even our modern day electricity is powered by steam engines. Like when we talk about nuclear is definitely powered by steam. What happens, I believe, you can correct me, Michael, here, is I believe what happens...
You're on the money.
Yeah, is the nuclear reaction heats up the water, and the water then obviously evaporates into steam, and then the steam power is then released in such a fashion that also then turns the steam-powered engine, right?
Yeah, the water boils into steam, and the steam, because the thing's so hot, the steam has a very high pressure, and so that pressure is then pushed around a turbine, through a turbine, and the turbine spins, and that's where you get your power from. To generate power, we need something to spin. Yeah. Solar panels being the exception. Everything else works from spinning.
But that just is so crazy to me that we revolutionized technology with the steam engine, and yet we're still using the steam engine. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
It's good.
Yeah. How amazing is that? Like, is there? It just.
If it works, don't fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, but like, it's just so interesting that like, how is it that we've not been able to find something even better by now? Like, it's interesting at the very least as a question.
It's like saying we still get around with wheels that are round.
Yeah, that's true.
We drive on round wheels. Why haven't we figured out something better than that by now? Because round wheels work. They work really well. If you try to change it, you can only really make it worse. There's no real way to make it any better.
I know how to make it better. Jetpacks.
Yeah, well. There's probably some idea you could come up with, like photovoltaic cells, which are solar panels.
Yeah.
Which we didn't have, but anyway, if it works, don't fix it. But go carry on.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. That's what I wanted to happen.
Tangent achieved.
I mean, exactly. I mean, of course, at this point, I'm riffing. So,
riff along, Jordan. Go for it.
No, you guys come in too. Don't leave me alone. But, I mean, that's very humble beginnings. And what's funny about steam engines is that it was developed in Europe to pump water out of coal mines because of course coal is very valuable, and after a certain point in time, that the steam engine powered by water was a little inefficient, and so they used the coal that they derived out of these mines to power the steam engines. And so it was like this, this kind of this cycle. It's pretty interesting stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Very interesting. But anyway, definitely interesting.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, that brings us into where we are today, which is a potential crisis. So recently there was a Oxford study that suggested that by 2035, 47% of all jobs in the U.S. will be lost to automation, and also there's very similar statistics for Europe as well, and so those are some pretty scary figures. That's only about there was only about 2 decades away. And, society as it stands right now we are not capable to handle such a drastic change in the workforce.
Yeah.
So
we're looking at a position where all of the jobs that need to be filled will be filled, and you'll still have half the population left. So you'll have 40, 50% unemployment potentially. And as we are now, we can't really support that. Which I think I just repeated what you said, but okay.
That's good. It bears repeating.
Repeating it in different words can always help as well.
Exactly.
I think it's like the rule of 3. Like if you say something in 3 different ways, it's sort of coordinates in some way, and it's easier to digest if you hear something said to you a few different ways. But
exactly.
Tangent achieved. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, there's staggering figures, such as there's in particular occupations. So, for instance, as an insurance underwriter, 99% of those jobs are at risk. As farm laborers, 97% of those jobs are at risk. 97, which is the same for fast food cooks. The same figure, 97% applies. Construction laborers, 88% of jobs are at risk. Truck drivers, 79%. Mail carriers, 68%. I mean, that. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's definitely worrying. And this was the big worry that I had going into this topic. Because I personally worry about the workforce and the working class and everything a lot more than I do the upper class typically. But
Though it's worth noting that many of the upper class and the middle class aren't immune from this. Things like lawyers, it's a fairly decent job. It's estimated that some 80% of lawyers' jobs could be lost to automation, because many of the stuff they do is just repetitive stuff you can do with a computer.
The lawyer themselves probably won't be getting rid of, but everyone working under the lawyer, all of the...
None of the lawyer themselves, the actual stuff the lawyer does, many of the stuff that they do could be automated.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, sure, but you still can't have a computer go into a courtroom. You still need a lawyer, to actually preside over the case still.
Won't lose all lawyers altogether, but a lot of the with each lawyer having most of the stuff they do automated means you need less lawyers.
Yeah.
But bankers too. Bankers is another big one.
Yeah, all I'm just saying is the people under the lawyers are especially at risk. The people that are pulling the documents and sending documents and doing all that, finding information in a load of documents can potentially be done more automated than the lawyer themselves is always going to be there, I think. It's just, most of their work is going to be able to be automated with machines. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, based on what I've read, fields like the healthcare industry may see an increase as the population ages. So that's an industry that's as far as we know, will not be drastically affected by automation. Yeah. But of course, your more lower level jobs, being a cook, a mechanist, a payroll clerks, and data entry, those kind of things are the risk is super high and actually it's so high that people who are considering having a career in those industries, like I said before, the farming industry or, being a driver of some kind, or it's
or
all
being
of that.
A worker drone in an office environment.
True, which no one dreams of course. But even just being a laborer, a construction laborer, which a lot of that is something that people aspire to be.
Yeah.
And that right now, as things are, they're forced to have to rethink their career aspirations because of what the future holds. And what's so crazy is that this conversation is something that's not being widely discussed. And I think, of course, the world is kind of crazy right now. But
I think it's similar to the climate change problem in that there's a impending crisis on the horizon, but it's happening quite slowly. And there's a whole bunch of other interlocking factors coming into it. And so Jim down the factory lost his job, but people lose their jobs all the time. It's not necessarily automation, is it? So it doesn't feel like it's one of them where it'll happen slowly and slowly and slowly, and so all of a sudden, the next thing you know, unemployment will be 20%, and you'll be like, "What why is everyone unemployed all of a sudden?"
Right.
I think it's going to get bad first.
Totally. I mean, like the job that Chris and I do, like we essentially do data entry, and that's something. Even before researching this topic, I would sit at my desk at work and think, man, how the hell can't technology do this already? And the thing is, they can. It's just the fact that it hasn't necessarily been implemented in this field to do it efficiently as say maybe Chris or I can.
Yeah.
But
it's a basic ability maybe right now for computers to do it, but the technology is making leaps and bounds almost on a daily basis in this regard. So the AI would be the one that really can shut our our jobs down and automate it. But AI is still not at a point where it can actually compete with human flexibility, because I was reading a few things this week about this topic, and one of the things that people were saying was about when it comes to humans versus machines, machines are very, very good at doing specific tasks, but if you instill any level of flexibility or variation into it, they get less good at it. And this is one thing that humans do very well, is we can move quickly onto a different form of problem solving in some ways. We can. I don't really have any good concrete examples of something. I wish I did. Damn. But I mean, I hope it makes sense though that we as humans, we can take the information coming to us and we can move with it more flexibly than a computer can. Is the way I can really explain it the best. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, of course, computers don't have the intellect to adapt to a new working environment. It takes a human to program it to form around it. Some new implementation.
Yeah, and that was a good word. Adaptation is I guess what I was sort of talking about. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
so
more adaptable.
So
yeah,
exactly. So in my research, I started to see or read about some very notable public figures who were when you think about computer technology, these are the people that come up. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, even scientific technology. I mean, such as Stephen Hawking, all these figures.
And Uber. Oh wait, maybe not.
Oh no, don't talk about them.
Those jerks. But anyway.
Yeah. So but all three of those figures that I just mentioned have have came out publicly, not this year, not even last year, years ago, talking about the dangers of automation to manufacturing and just to the job market, and how we can, how society and humanity globally can form itself around an automated workforce. How we can better adapt to that. And what's interesting is each one of those figures have a different take on it all. So, like, for instance, Bill Gates Elon Musk is a huge proponent of universal basic income as maybe an answer to this new future that we're going to face.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's man, like, let's talk about some, let's theorize exactly what do you think will be the saving grace for humanity? Like, especially in a humanity where we take pride. We're supposed, a lot of us take pride in the work that we do. What's going to happen if that work is no longer there to take pride in? Like, what's going to be the effects on the human psyche? What's going to be the effect on on individuals economically? Like, let's talk about it.
I think that's a good question. It's one that a lot of people don't really answer, is that when there's no more work to do, what are people going to do? If you've been off work for a long period of time, you know what I mean? It's boring. And there isn't that much you want. You want something to do. You want something productive to put yourself to.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some working out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, it's tough to really know where we have to go with these things. There was a Voltaire quote that I saw earlier in one of the videos that I posted to you guys. I can't remember it entirely, but it was something along the lines of like, working is the best way to prevent, something along these lines is the best way to prevent boredom. I forgot the other two. Jesus, man, I'm terrible at this.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I can't remember it, but it was an interesting Voltaire quote. I'd have to pull it up real quick if I have time here. But
yeah, I know what you mean. It's very not doing anything is very difficult for people. That might, whether that's our human nature or just society's expectations, it's impossible to really say. But yeah, there's something about when we no longer need to work that's going to be interesting psychologically as well as economically.
Totally. I've read countless articles that said, like, the artistic spirit in people will kind of take over or kind of replace the worker in us. We're forced to become more creative and maybe take on more creative fields of work, which, of course, robots or automation or artificial intelligence don't have that freeness to pursue.
Yeah. I'm not too worried because I can't see a robot teaching anytime soon. But even if I was and my job was taken by a robot, I can't help but think I'm not an artist. I can't do art.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think I do remember seeing that, like, they have been working in, I believe, Japan on robots that can actually teach, though. Just to say.
Probably, but I can't see it replacing teachers anytime soon. There's going to be automatic aids.
Yeah, we'll see. But I did find that Voltaire quote. It's a quote: "Work keeps at bay the three great evils: boredom, vice, and need." So that is the one quote that I was trying to remember. It was something along those lines that I remember seeing earlier. So, but yeah, like, work really is important to to people. If we don't have anything to do, boredom sucks. Boredom is not a fun time. And if you're bored, then you tend to try and find other ways to live, and that can be where vice comes in, I guess, where you start finding other things to fill your time with.
Some of those are going to be self-destructive.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And also need. Like, if you need something, you just work for it, whereas, if you're not working and you need something, you can't get that thing that you need, potentially, and so that was at least the thinking back in Voltaire's time. Things are changing these days. And like you did say, Elon Musk is a proponent of a universal basic income. And it is very possible that our trajectory with automation and how much automation is taking over in a lot of different jobs, that we almost need a sort of universal basic income. Otherwise, we will just have millions and millions of people out of work and starving in the streets. I mean, I'm pretty sure that doesn't seem to be a very good idea for a society to have. Millions and millions of people starving and dying in the streets.
Right. I mean, I think the ramifications of a universal basic income are far greater than just, I guess, taking on automation. We also have to consider the fact that this has the potential to even, it will decrease poverty. Around the world, having a universal basic income system, and and there's been countless attempts in different countries to either experiment with this or try to spearhead this through politically, and so one that I actually read very recently was Switzerland. Now I didn't know this, but Switzerland last year in June had a referendum on a universal basic income. It got 10,000 votes, and because it got 10,000 signatures, because it got 10,000 signatures, it was subject to a vote. And so what happened was, unfortunately, it didn't pass. Now it didn't pass majorly. It was 77 to 33. And I don't necessarily understand, know why there was that huge disparity. I'm sure maybe the pro UBI didn't have the right message, because still when I hear universal basic income being spoken about today in different circles, it's usually about grossly neglects the conversation of automation. It usually that automation isn't even associated with the conversation of universal basic income
Universal basic income tries to change the question a little bit. Instead of asking how do we support people when they can't work, it tries to change the idea to, now that you don't have a job, now a robot is doing your job, you're free to do something else. So what are you going to do? UBI tries to shift that attention somehow. But it's important to note, a UBI doesn't necessarily have to be enough to live on yet. Some people who propose a UBI are proposing actually something quite small, supported by welfare, which you can then raise up to what's called a basic standard of living, which is when UBI is enough to live on.
Right.
Yeah. And that would be the one thing that I would say, the caveat to what you were saying earlier, that universal basic income may not necessarily change poverty in some ways. If some people still can't make enough money even on universal basic income, there's still going to be poverty, but it might definitely help things, but I don't know how much either, is all I can say on that.
I mean, I guess the hope is that it'll decrease the amount of families living below the poverty line, right? But I guess, like you said, it's all contingent on how much you're receiving. So I know, in Switzerland, they were proposing, and let's do the conversion in American dollars, about, over $2,600 per month, per individual. And, yeah.
That's a lot of money, actually. I don't make that much with my job right now, working full time. So yeah, it's pretty decent.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, a lot of the whole idea of a UBI in Switzerland came out of the fact that the cost of living up there was just continuing to rise, and people were just like, all right, we need to start considering some options here. And but I mean, there's countless arguments to why universal basic income might not work. And of course, that goes into that quote you had, Chris, which is like, if people aren't working, don't have that as their, as the thing that that drives them, then what is there to do? It's people become aimless, and can potentially become aimless, and
potentially.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I had a point here, but I can't think of it right now.
It's okay, but the thing is that aimlessness, it's going to happen anyway, because automation is going to come.
Yeah, we can't really stop it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But also I want to throw in another potential positive component that could be, for society in light of automation, which is one that Bill Gates actually talks a lot about, which is a tax on robots, which, sounds kind of ridiculous, but
let's tax the robots, make them pay taxes.
We kind of would go that way in the end, because in order to pay for UBI, you have to extract money from somewhere.
Yeah.
And so what's going to end up happening is huge corporate taxes, because as it is, you have a robot which is producing loads of stuff, but doesn't cost electricity and maintenance. It doesn't really cost anything at all. So,
yeah, I mean, if companies and corporations are the only ones making money in the
yeah, if no one's working, then it's only the people who own the robots who get rich, and so we're going to have massive wealth disparity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is a critique of a universal basic income from the left, and I think it has a lot to do with that factor, where a universal basic income sort of like helps the massively wealthy in some ways. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember how that works or anything, though, but I've heard it kicked around before. I can't, for the life of me, think of it right off the top of my head anymore, though.
If I remember correctly, they think the problem with universal basic income is that there's still going to be private industry holders. This is mostly from your actual socialist kind of people. The private industry holders are still going to have all the money. It's just they happen to spread a little around. So you have you have a few people making crap loads of money, and then you have the rest who are just on basic, enough to live on, but basic.
Yeah.
And because the robots have all the jobs, there's no opportunity for advancement.
Yeah.
What the proposal there is to actually just socialize everything.
Yeah, more government and intervention in some ways,
Yeah, have the industries owned by the workers. There isn't any workers. But yeah, essentially, you'd have socialized industries.
I've got it.
Instead of private ownership.
Make it so that the robots own the government and the means of production. That's the only way.
Let's automate politicians.
Robots need to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, this is going to be in our lifetimes. This is the struggle that we are going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives. I'm pretty sure the three of us here are young enough that we have many years ahead of us, and we are definitely going to be seeing this in our futures, and this is very worrying, in a lot of ways, where we are going to have to go through the transition period between the old school way of doing things where everyone just, worked and that was the way you subsisted on life, and going to maybe later on in our lifetimes when we're older, we're going to see pretty much like full capture of a lot of industries and a lot of job fields by automation. And that's worrying. It's when we have to be the pioneers that actually live through the massive change of that. It's worrying.
We're
no
fucked.
matter what you do. Yeah. In some ways, we might be fucked. I
Chris,
don't know.
The future depends on you. We're fucked.
Well, thanks for the vote of confidence there, Michael. But but yeah, it's a very, very insecure time in a lot of ways, especially when we look at where we stand right now as things are. The poor are getting poorer. The middle class is dying. The rich are getting massively, massively wealthier than ever before in the history of humanity. No time in history has the wealthy elites been as disproportionately wealthy compared to the bottom class as they are today. That even goes to slavery and those times as well. The wealthy have more wealth to themselves than even slaves did to their master counterparts back in colonial times. That fact should be worrying to anyone. And when our jobs and our livelihoods for the rest of us are basically being taken away from us to be given to the robots and automation, it's even more worrying, because where does that go? Do we get starved out by the wealthiest in society? Do we just all just die off? Is that how it's going to work? Or are we going to find some solution where we can all be, part of this human thing still going forward? Or do we have a massive uprising of the lower classes to take down the elites? I don't know. Like, there's so many variables that are just uncertain right now. And to say the very least, we are in very, very uncertain times going forward into the future. And this is part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway.
Yeah, how exactly we get to the place where we solve this, with some ideas of what the end state's going to look like, but we don't really know how to get there, especially within our current politics, which is... Yeah.
We don't even know what the end state looks like either. It's an issue.
We have some ideas, don't we? Like UBIs
there are
and things
ideas,
like this,
but yeah.
But we have no idea how to get there under the current system, which seems intent on just avoiding the problem altogether.
Yeah.
We're going to get you jobs back, and a lot of those jobs they're just not coming back.
Yeah. Goes back to that Bernie Sanders response to Donald Trump's State of the Union thing. In that speech, in that response in itself, Bernie Sanders does talk about how unemployment has been going down for years now, and things have been getting better in some metrics, but within the last 11 months of Donald Trump's presidency, we've had a net loss of jobs of over 200,000 jobs, I believe is what his numbers were for the last year of Donald Trump. And so, like, that being said, like, going forward, we have this looming automation crisis at hand where are we going to lose hundreds of thousands more jobs? Are we going to lose millions more jobs going forward? And like Jordan said, it's as close as 20 years away, where we can potentially see almost half of the job market swallowed up by automation entirely. Half of the jobs that we have can be lost within the next 20 years. Where do we go from there?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's very open-ended, but I think there was another point in our history where, where people were feeling very uncertain about their job prospects, and that goes, and I'm referring to the decrease in agricultural jobs, in farming, at a certain point in time, like I believe over 80% of people made their means off of farming. And over time that started to decrease. And with that decreasing, the United States, the government itself had to invest in secondary education in order for people to learn new skills, because, the old way the old way of doing things was being phased out. And so we had to prepare, the populace for a new tomorrow. And I think that's what needs to happen. These jobs, these low-level jobs, these rote jobs, these very, repetitive jobs of yesteryear are going to have to become replaced with jobs that are more cognitive, that are more creative, and who knows, or maybe in the medical field even, those kind of jobs will increase, at least that's what they're saying in the future.
I mean,
so
jobs in the healthcare field have also been rising already for a very long time, and that is a very large part of that is the boomer generation is retiring. And because there's so many boomers, we suddenly have this very, very large need for a lot more healthcare workers in the country, and probably across Europe as well, and the United Kingdom, I would assume, as well. But especially here in the United States, there are so many boomers retiring at once that it's going to be a massive, massive undertaking to care for all of them. What was that? I'm sorry?
We have similar problems. The population's aging is part of why the NHS is struggling so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing here. And so this is why you're seeing a very major increase in healthcare professionals and everything, and that can probably be in the future too, when most of the other jobs that are easier to automate go away. We still do need, at least for now, we still need humans to do the healthcare industry, because there are a lot of things in the healthcare industry that computers just can't do yet.
Right. And I think one thing we pretty much agree on is that this is an issue that our government have to tackle. This is something that, is going to take law and regulation in order to better,
and social policy
handle this. Exactly.
Yeah. There's no way that the free market will ever really be able to transition well with this, because there's no incentive for the free market to transition well. This is where
the free market doesn't look after people very well.
Yeah, exactly. They look for the bottom line, which is profit. And so when businesses try and make these decisions, it's very easy for a business to say, all right, I'm just going to cut the 90% of my staff and just go automated. It's a very easy situation, especially in the wake of potentially the minimum wage rising, and there are a lot of people that do fearmonger about if we do raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, that's going to accelerate this. And that might largely be true, unfortunately. but it's mostly because of our technology that we are going to go automated. It isn't necessarily because it was going to go there anyway. Is the way that we have to start looking at this. This trend is going to happen no matter what we do. Whether we prepare for it or not, we are going to be seeing automation taking over large swaths of our jobs. And so the question then becomes, how do we respond to that? And that is where we need to start actually focusing on, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen whether we do anything or not. So let's actually do something about that. Now, one thing that I read also that was actually a very interesting way of maybe like jobs working into the future here is it was they sort of said like maybe jobs can sort of like have it where a worker 60% of the time they're actually doing work, and then 40% of the time they're learning new things and learning new skills. Because the way this is working is these jobs that are going to be getting steamrolled over by automation, it's going to keep happening. There's going to be more and more jobs lost. So you'll have a human doing it one day, and then maybe in a few months a robot might be doing that same job. So the only way to keep these workers competitive with that and actually moving into a different job or something is to actually have them getting educated along the way as well. So That makes sense to me in a lot of ways, but I do know there are people out there that don't like learning, and they kind of like,
and that only happens for so long. There's going to be simply less jobs than there are people.
Yeah. So it's all of it is just still worrying, and
there is the other option of reducing hours. So let's say you make 19 grand a year, keeping it at 19 grand a year, but reducing your hours to 30 a week. I mean, it's the same money for less work.
Yeah, I think
because your job's done by robots now.
I think that's what they were like talking about though with that 60-40. So you're technically only working 60% of the time, which might actually be like 20 hours a week or something like that. And then the rest of the week, you're learning new things to potentially transition to something else when you need to. And I think that's not a bad idea for because companies back in historic times, back in the 1800s even, people didn't get jobs after they went to college, typically. What you had to do was apprentice at a job for a while, and you learned the trade, as it were, while on the job. And so the one thing that we have done for corporations and companies alike for their benefit has been to sort of separate job training from the jobs themselves. So then these corporations can be very, very picky on who they hire. And then at the same time, we have people going to school for things that they can't get jobs in anyway. And so it's created this really big mess that we have with education right now. Whereas we should have a system where if there are jobs for people, these corporations should be the ones training them and getting them the education that they need to do the jobs that they're trying to get people to do. They've just offloaded the cost onto the employee at this point right now, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. And that's not to say that higher education isn't important. I'm absolutely a proponent of higher education for everyone. And this is why I think universal higher education is important. But it does show you that there is a problem here. You know, there is something going on here. companies used to train these people to do these jobs. And now they don't have to do it anymore. And I think it's actually not a bad idea for them to start doing it again in some ways, you know?
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I noticed that, especially over here in the States, is there's a really bold push for STEM in getting young people, kind of turning them towards careers within those industries. And it's because they're ever expanding. And those are the type of fields that require cognitive ability and
a little creativity. Exactly,
creativity as well. And so that's going to require, like we've been saying, is like a re-education of the masses. Like we've dealt with this before, you know, with agriculture and manufacturing. You know, those used to be the main jobs available for people, and with time we had to start adapting to a new world, and that's just what's going to happen now. And so yeah, I guess all isn't completely lost. It's just so uncertain, but I think it'll be, my personal belief is that that the jobs that we will be losing will essentially just be replaced with things that we've already discussed.
Yeah.
That seem to be very, that seem not to be at risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of jobs that people don't want to do in the first place, I think. At least for the most part, for a little while. You know, like, nobody gets up at the beginning of the day and says, I want to work on an assembly line. Yes! You know what I mean? You don't want to go to work and have this boring, monotonous, every day, okay, I'm going to screw in these screws every single day for like hours on end. You know, that is boring work that we don't like doing as human beings. And so that's the kind of stuff that, you know, in a lot of ways is okay that we're getting rid of. It's just the worry is, what are we going to get people doing after that? You know, because if our system stays the way it is and people still need to have income from a job, and jobs are just being shed from the economy, like it's a fire sale of some sort, you know, like it's like, how do we transition away from the way that we are today into a place where these people don't have to starve in the streets then, you know? And that's the $1 million question that we need to answer. And there is the universal basic income, like we said earlier, that is a potential way that we can solve it, but I don't know if that's the way that we're going to be able to go with it as well. So, I mean,
right. I think it's good. Like, it is the coupling of a UBI with job training, essentially, and just investing in secondary education. Like, you know, that's what needs to happen, because, you know, you going over those very repetitive jobs that no one really wants to do, but it pays the bills. Yeah. If robots are basically, if we're going to handle those, delegate those tasks to machines, then that opens up the possibility of us becoming involved in more fulfilling occupations,
potentially,
such as STEM. So, I mean,
STEM and even like the arts, you know, like people,
and arts as well. Yeah.
We love artwork and music as human beings, you know, and I mean, if people could just focus on artwork and music and all those things, people will definitely be a lot happier in that regard, you know. Even if you don't have to worry about like money and stuff, you know, especially if you don't have to worry about money and all that, people can just do music if they want to. That's a great thing in a lot of ways, you know? Right.
I mean, thinking about this even more, a universal basic income can almost be just like momentary until the populace gets gets back on their feet and more acclimated to this new to the new workforce. Like, you know, if essentially we get to a point where, yeah, sure, these robots are taking over they have these fast food positions, and they're, you know, there's no checkout lines anymore. You just walk out with whatever you have in your bag and you're charged for it. And, you know, there's no cabbies anymore. Then, you know, then once, like, you know, once the populace gets educated in these new fields of study, essentially we could potentially just stop the UBIs and continue on kind of where we left off, in a sense, where it's like, oh, we're able to actually provide for ourselves again. Like, you know, this transition is over. We fully made the transition. Let's get back to business.
Potentially. You know? But I have a feeling, though, if we did have a universal basic income, I don't know if that would be something that would go away ever. And I've
No,
found,
it probably wouldn't. Especially because no one wants to lose something once they've got it. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, unfortunately. But it's okay. But I've found that, like, the one way that I can see, like, we have a major problem when it comes to politics right now. The right wing is like breathing fire at any mention of an entitlement program of any kind. You know, they hate anything that has anything to do with, like, entitlements, where you're just getting free stuff from the government. And that's easy to demonize when a large portion of the population doesn't actually take advantage of those entitlement programs. Let's say unemployment. People that are employed don't get unemployment, you know, so they don't like when other people are taking advantage of that for whatever reason. Or people that are on Social Security, people that don't need Social Security to make their ends meet, or don't even qualify for it, cannot take advantage of those things. You know, they become embittered by other people getting these free things from government as they see it. But if there is a universal basic income, that makes it easier for us to have these people that do need these entitlement programs, quote unquote, to subsist off of. That people, there are always going to be a number of people that cannot work for whatever reason. Maybe a mental deficiency or mental problem that is plaguing them, that just does not allow them to actually have any kind of, like, reasonable work life, or a physical disability of, like, you don't have legs, so you can't do 90% of the jobs out there or something. You know, these things do happen, and these people need these programs to help them subsist. You know, like, we need those people to have those programs, or otherwise they're starving in the streets, and I don't think anyone wants that. And so, right. The way that I see it is, like, with a universal basic income, that then takes the pressure off of everyone in a lot of ways, because everyone gets it. And so you cannot say, oh, all these freeloaders taking all this stuff from the government. No, you're getting it too. So they don't have that argument of, oh, there's all these people just taking free things from the government. Everyone is taking it, you know? And I guess, like, coupling it with the robotic, tax that we talked about earlier, where if you're automating work, then you're going to get taxed accordingly. That actually makes sense with this as well, you know, as a larger picture. You know, this doesn't mean that all jobs will be gone for human beings. There will most likely still be a lot of jobs to be going around. But there is at least going to be a level of income that you don't have to worry about as a human being anymore. And so when you have that other job, you may actually make more money over the top of whatever that basic income is, and that's, just your net extra for your living, and you can do what you want with that. It's sort of like, I don't know, going from like a minimum wage job to like a slightly higher paying job, sort of like benefits of like economic growth in that way, where you don't have to, survive off of ramen. You can actually once in a while buy lobster or something, So I don't know. Like we would have to find out where that basic income level should sit. Personally, I want it to be somewhere comfortable for everyone. Like I don't know. Like I want people to be able to have shelter. I want people to be able to have food. I want people to be able to have access to electricity, air conditioning, and all of these things that are almost like, necessities in America at this point, for Americans. Maybe in the UK they don't need as much AC, but, it's a different story.
No, AC. Heating they do.
Yeah, exactly. So you're always going to need heating, though, yeah. So these are basics that I think everyone should have, no matter what the situation. And so with a basic income, we can potentially have a space where you can get all of these things. And then if you want more than that, your basic income or your basic necessities, if you want more than that, you can get a job and do something and get a little bit extra, That's all.
Yeah. I think this is all happening at a very interesting time where 2 years ago, a poll came out that suggested that millennial workers care less about money and more about personal fulfillment, which is really interesting. I mean, take out of that what you will, but I mean, personally, I do have that feeling where, like what my purpose seems to be more, is paramount to my 9 to 5. Like, I feel like they're two separate things when in fact, when our parents were working, like they both went hand in hand. And, I don't know. Maybe it's because, our jobs don't support us as much as they did when our parents were working. We don't have, our jobs are less like, they don't produce lifers, people who are working in a position or at a job for decades. Right now the environment is designed to where people are only there for 2-3 years at a time before moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot on a previous show, didn't we? A lot of jobs that were in company now are being outsourced to agencies where they get less benefits and less promotional opportunities. So they'll generally work one job, it'll get stale, and they'll move on to something, or even get sacked because there's no labor laws anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Sacked for our American listeners is being fired.
Yeah, get sacked. Yeah.
But that's I mean, we're most likely going to be talking about this stuff for a very, very long time on this show. We are a bit over time.
We are, but before we end things, I also want to say we're very early on this discussion. This is something that's not being talked about widely, and politically, personally. So, do you think maybe, I guess, having automation as a major point on a platform is politically advantageous? Do you think talking about this today has the potential to actually benefit?
Do you mean politically or electorally? Because they are very different things.
That is very true. Electorally, that's much better.
Because electorally, maybe, depending on how you message it, I think if you message it as people are losing jobs and I don't know, the most popular thing to do is say, I'm going to get your job back.
That's
realistically
easy. That's easy and tangible for people to actually grasp. That's why it's usually the go-to, I think.
Yeah.
But go on, Michael.
So electorally, it's a hard sell. But politically, in terms of the mechanics of running a country, I think it's very important to know about, to have politicians who are knowledgeable about the subject, so that we can start to prepare for automation better.
I think we need more deniers in office that are just denying all of the scientific advancements, denying climate change, denying that
climate change are uncanny. It's a big crisis that's coming up. We can't do anything to stop it. All we can do is prepare for it, maybe mitigate some of the effects. But despite us knowing that this is happening, the governments are patently refusing to do anything about it, to the point where no one really wants to talk about it. Yeah, as Bernie mentioned.
That's a very interesting point, that the governments aren't doing anything for either of these things.
Yeah. We don't seem to be very good with this kind of slow crisis. If something happens now, like, something big, we can deal with that. Well, normally, like I was going to say like a hurricane, but the hurricane response, like a hurricane in Texas, the response down there has been pretty good. Not a hurricane in Puerto Rico, the response has been shite, but that's a different topic.
Well, they're easily, pushed aside because they're not really Americans, right?
Yeah. But if something big happens like that, we can deal with it. It's tangible. It's in our face. We can say, oh, God, look, there's people without houses. Okay, well, their houses got destroyed. We should send them aid and we send them support and things. This kind of slow crisis, we're not very good at it. We as humans aren't really programmed to think in terms of this really slow, creeping problem that happens over a long period of time until it becomes an immediate problem. But with a lot of these long, slow crises, they're just not... You can't react to them when it becomes a problem. You have to head it off much earlier than that, or it's too late. Yeah. It's a failure of human psychology, and...
Yeah, I mean, there are some serious limitations to human psychology, and it's interesting to think about, because like when it comes to thinking abstractly, about these big, massive things, like the universe, nobody, not even Neil deGrasse Tyson, not even Stephen Hawking can possibly really, realistically comprehend the size of the universe. It's impossible. It's literally impossible.
Abstract through maths and numbers.
Yeah. You can only look at it from very small little tidbits. You cannot really actually conceive of the entirety of the universe. And this is a limitation of the human brain, and there are obviously other limitations of our understanding, and it does go to like you're saying, more long-term thinking. It's much, much harder for us to really think more long-term.
It's why you absolutely have to elect someone who is competent and knowledgeable and smart and able to think, well, okay, this is going to be a problem. We should do something about this.
Like Donald Trump?
Rather than, say, Donald Trump, who is just an idiot.
But he's such a long-term thinker. I don't know what you're talking about. He's big league and tremendous. That's what I hear from the greatest people.
It's actually one of the problems with... I was talking about some of this about someone the other day. One of the problems with our 4-year, 5-year election cycle is that we only really focus on this 4 or 5 years. Planning for 20 years down the line isn't really incentivized.
Yeah.
You want results in the next 4 years so you can get re-elected or, get your party re-elected. You don't really care what happens 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah. And I mean, there has been an issue with the Democratic Party here. They have not been running in all 50 states. There are states where the Democratic Party just doesn't run. They don't care because they know that they are at such a massive disadvantage in those states, or they think they are, that they haven't really tried. And so what you get there is just complete domination by Republicans in some states. And this is why there are some solidly red states, because the Democrats just didn't try. And this is something that they are changing recently, I think. I forget the guy's name who's in charge of the DNC now. I forget his name, but like, he has been talking more about actually having a 50-state solution or a 50-state strategy for once. Yeah, you know, this is something that has been lacking in the Democratic Party for a while. And obviously, since the very last election, they realized, oh, wait, yeah, we probably should have a 50-state strategy since we just got screwed over in a really serious way. And why is it that one party isn't even contesting some of these states in some reasonable fashion? That makes no sense. You know, like the two major parties, one of them doesn't even try in some states. How messed up is that? How to the voters, what does that look like to the average voter of some of those states? You know, it says to them that you don't give a shit about them. And so this is why they just vote Republican, because, well, at least they had the decency to actually come here and work for my vote.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think
we're off on a tangent off of the topic, but
we're gonna wrap things up. But one thing I definitely want to part people with is that, like, politicians tell us that immigrants are the reason why we can't find a good job, or can't find jobs, period, for that matter. And it creates a clear-cut enemy for people to veer their attention towards. And while our backs are turned, of course, you know, politicians are able to run amok. And the thing is, if only society really knew that, you know, that these jobs they're just not coming back. A lot of them just are not here to stay. And no, that is not because of, an influx in immigration or because of brown people. This is a crisis that humanity is inevitably facing. And technology is not, when we look at it, it's not an enemy to us. It's something that, you know, that's completely is woven into our daily lives. And so
not if we knew that yet.
right. Exactly. Skynet. But if collectively we did know, look, these people aren't the reason why we can't find jobs. This is just where we're heading as a species. It forces us to stop bickering with one another about you know, who has what in terms of jobs, and start actually working together for you know, the betterment of, you know, of humankind, you know, to adapt to a new way of life. And that's much more, you know, that's much bigger than, you know, these little conversations that are happening, you know, about jobs currently.
Yeah.
So,
and hopefully we can do that. Hopefully we can make that transition, but, it is worrying where we stand now. But,
with that, I think we're done, guys.
Yeah, I guess. Any last words, guys, before we head out of here?
Don't know. There's not much to. Normally, I'd say call your congressman about this, but there's not much. There isn't much to this, really. I suppose just being aware of what's going on in the topic is a good idea, and be wary of red herrings. And it's like the Venus Project, who are just insane. But yeah, just be aware. Next week we're looking at infrastructure. We're going to try and get ahead of the curve a bit, because the next big thing the Republicans are doing is infrastructure. There's a few big infrastructure projects going on in the UK at the moment, so
that should be a very interesting topic indeed.
I'm hoping so. Yeah. So that's my topic for next week.
Yeah, I suppose.
You guys?
Anything, Jordan?
No, I said my piece. How about you?
All right. Well, my little thing. Fuck you, Donald Trump, and fuck you, Republicans, and fuck you, Paul Ryan. With that,
oh yeah, go Eagles.
Hey, gee. Oh, what? I don't even, oh my God! The people in our office were chanting that for like an hour straight. It was really, really annoying. Yeah. I'm not a sports fan. I don't really care enough about them to really I don't know. But anyway, it was really annoying. Anyway, guys, you have a great week. We will talk to you next week with infrastructure. Look forward to seeing you guys.
Okay.
Have fun.